Hey YouTube, how you doing? Kevin here. Alright, well, it's way too hot outside. I'm going through a whole bunch of stuff in the house, so I figured I'd do a quick video. This video right here was upon request about the ignition wiring for the ignition system on the KD80s, the KE100s, the KM100s. This is basically the same wiring harness found on most dirt bikes that you'll find that are older, 1980s and earlier. So let me see if this will help you. This is a Kdat motor, same engine design and setup as the KE100, the KD100, the KH, the KC, the 90, the KM, the KE100s, all these two-strokers, the 175, the 125, all those have the same setup. So there's a couple of different types of ignition systems here, and I'm going to teach you how to identify them, because a lot of people, there's not really much information on these ignition systems, especially the electronic one. And a lot of people are like, what? The KE100 had an electronic ignition? Yes, it did. The newer ones and some of the KHs. There is no ignition module on these. Okay, I want to make that very clear. There is no CDI box. If you're looking for a CDI box, you're not going to find one. Okay, this is the mag from a 1999 and I believe newer KE100. That's your pickup coil right there for your electronic ignition. And these are 2, 4, 6 volt for your charging system. And you will find your rotor is going to look like this. There is no cam for points because there is no points. There is 1, 2, 3, 4 magnets to go with each post. 4 posts. The original on all those other bikes I described have slants. So the coil is a little longer, and they're 3 volt coils. There are 2 3 volt coils and a 6 volt or a 12 volt coil for the ignition coil down bottom. And then your points are right where my finger is located. But I'm going to show you what that's going to look like in a minute. Alright, so real quick, if you have a 12 volt system, which is on a little newer of the bikes, it's going to have a magneto that's going to look like this. And it's going to have 6, you can't really see them all too well with this in the lighting. Let's see if I have a light handy. I do. Let's see if I can shine some light on the subject for you. Yeah, okay, 1 second. See how there's individual little magnets on the sidewalls there? There are 6 total on this one, and each one's for 2 volts. So that'd be a 12 volt mag. This actually came off of a Chinese scooter, but I just wanted to show it to you anyway so you can tell the different magnets. Okay, now the part that is very confusing to people. Okay, if the bike is a CD ignition and it doesn't have a CDI box, well, where the hell is it? Okay, it is built into the ignition coil. Ta-da! See how fat that coil is? The CDI is built into this box. Right there, that's the factory coil for a KE100. And it has a transistor inside of it. And that's how it works. Transistor ignition, CDI, and yep, that's where it's located, in the coil. So it gets confusing when people go and buy one of these coils, CDI ignition coil, and puts it in the bike and it doesn't work. Well, it's not going to work, because although the coil says it's compatible with CDI ignition, and eBay has them all on there for the KE100. If you look up KE100 CDI, this is the coil you're going to find. A guy that sold me a bike, he said, and I didn't even know this was on there until I took the bike apart. He said it has CDI ignition and there is no spark. So he changed out the coil and he couldn't get it to go. Well, that's why, because this coil right here doesn't have it. In fact, this coil is just simply a coil, and the bike that this should be on is the bike that goes with that one, which would have a CDI ignition box. Interesting. Now if you look at this coil, and you look at the other factory coil, look how similar they are. That's because they are both the same. That's it. No difference. So one might be wound a little tighter, might have a few more winds, might put out a little bit more amperage, but guess what? They're the same. That one is different because it has a CDI built into it, which goes with this whole setup right here. Now how can you tell if your KE100 has a CDI box or CDI ignition without removing the tank and without checking to see if it has that coil in there? Simple. On your harness where the motor plugs into the right between your seat and your fuel tank, there's the connector for the motor. If it has that blue connector on it, it's electronic ignition. So right up the middle tube that goes on the bike, between your tank and your seat, you're going to see the connectors right there. There's a white one, and if it has the blue one, it will have electronic ignition. If it doesn't, then it has the regular points. Now, if it has regular points, it's going to look like this. Okay, the two yellow wires are for your magnetos. Okay, so these are two different harnesses. The yellow wires are for your mag, for your what do you call it there? Your charging coil for your alternator. And then you got your green wire, which is your neutral safety switch, and the black wire is for your coil, you know, for your ignition. And on the points one, it has a black and white. On the non-electronic, on the electronic ignition, solid black. So that's the difference on those two harnesses. Now, the KE100, the KD80 does not have a neutral safety switch, which will be located up underneath where I got this coil right here resting. Right here. See that right there? That's a block-off plate. There would be a black cap, looks just like that, with one connector on it. And that right there will hook up to your, if you're looking on your magneto, this green wire right here is for your neutral safety. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into this. The purpose for this video is the wiring. Okay, I picked this one right here. This is a Kdat motor. It's a real simple setup. There is no charging coil for your alternator because this doesn't have lights. So this is a stripped down version of the KE100 and all those. You have one wire coming off your magneto, so it comes right through here. One wire, simply one wire. That one wire goes into this 2 connector. The second wire goes up to your ignition coil, and the third wire goes up to, well, yeah, there's one going at the bottom. That's for, that comes off your magneto coil, your pickups. You're not pickups, your alternator, your generator, your mag. Second wire goes up to your ignition coil, and the third goes up to your ignition switch on your handlebars. Okay. Since we're here, I'm going to do a video on how to access this, take this off properly. So we're going to pretend there's a side cover on here, and I get a lot of questions about removing the side cover. I use a big screwdriver and I still strip out the screws. Well, I'm going to show you a tool that's going to help you with that, so you're not going to strip out your screws. These are what the screws look like. They're big Phillips, and for some reason, once they're in that block, they tighten right up. And it's probably because the stainless steel into aluminum. This bit right here is the same size as that big screwdriver, and then this right here is an impact driver. So I'll load this into here. I'm doing this one-handed. I apologize. It's a little shaky on the video. I apologize once again. Sorry about that. Okay. So you put that into your screw that you want to take off. You turn it to the left. Okay. And then you whack it as hard as you can, or fairly hard. Not as hard as you can, but fairly hard on the back of this impact driver, on the back of the impact driver, and that'll shock the bolt loose, and it works great. And that's how you take off all the screws, and they won't strip out on you. Okay, so Now that we got the side cover removed, we're going to take off the center nut here. Do not use an impact gun. I'm going to tell you why. Because these cranks tend to be soft, and you can break the end of this crankshaft right off. Okay, see how it's got that little hollow divot in it? Yep, that's for the specialty tool, which I'm going to show you. That is this right here. This has two sides. This one right here cost me, this one was the $18 one because it has two different sides to it. But there's a $12 one that is specifically for your bike. So anyway, this has reverse threads. So you screw it on backwards. But the center nut is the lefty loosey righty tighty, the regular style, what do you call it there, bolts. Okay. Now, I'm going to take this and screw this all the way in as far as I can go with it. Because the more grip, the better. I'm going to then remove the spark plug. Take that out. And I'm going to use this is a spark plug stop. Right here, got the long one. I'm going to throw that in the engine right there. It screws right into the spark plug hole. Take the motor, screw that in nice and as tight as you can get it by hand. You don't need to go monkey on it. You don't need to, what do you call it there, tighten it up to the point of breaking it. Okay, and then you tighten up this. I already have this apart, so just kind of doing a demonstration video for you. The piston will actually hold the crank from top. You know, you can't go any further than that. And then the magneto will come off. Boom. And now we're all exposed. Okay, so what we have here is we have our charging coil that's going to power the condenser and points. And then eventually make its way up to the ignition coil, which is mounted underneath your fuel tank. Okay, so since we got this all apart, I'm going to tell you a couple of things about this. If your bike is hesitating, feels like it's got lack of power, very hard to start, misses, skips a little bit, it may be that condenser. That condenser goes, it'll mess the whole system up. The condenser's job is when you got the voltage built up inside here, okay, and it goes up to your points. When these things go back and forth, up and down, it's going to make a spark right here. The condenser's job is to stop that from happening, because if this thing sparks too much, it'll arc out and then it'll burn themselves up. So the condenser stops the arcing. It's basically what it does, stops the arcing. And when that doesn't do that, it shorts out the ground, and that's what gives you your issues. Okay, so we're going to talk about the generator. We're going to change over for a second. I'm going to talk to you about the generator on the KE100. See this big hole right here and this big hole right here? And see how these are angled? That's what I was talking to you about. There's one coil here for your alternator. There's a 3-volt coil here and a 3-volt coil there for your what do you call it there? Your charging system. And on your magnets on the back on this one, see how they got 3 long magnets? That's for 3 posts, and that's how they do it. Couple things, couple tips. When you do your points, these points are bad. You can see the rust on them underneath there. There's a happy trail right there. I cleaned them up a little bit. But one of the most neglected things is this felt right here. Okay, this felt right here should be oiled. It does not oil itself. It is not self-oiling. You have to oil that. What that does is that keeps the cam on the... I'm going to keep this tool out of here real quick. It keeps the cam clean and lubricated so your points can open and close properly. Your point's right on this cam, okay, and that sweeps that rides on that cam. It keeps it lubricated and clean. This one right here, I put oil on it. I spray it down. I use 10W30 or motor oil like that. But you don't need to soak it. That's the thing. A little bit will do you. You might have to if it hasn't been done in a while to kind of soften it up, but you don't really need too much. So that's pretty much it for that, for the magneto. Back on this. Okay, so how this works is your power goes from that gold coil right here to your condenser to your points. When the cam comes around, it opens and closes them. Energy is built up in your coil, your ignition coil. There's 2 windings. This is a step-up transformer. It takes the 12 volts or 6 volt and brings it up to a few 100,000, and I think it's like 50,000 volts or something like that. And then when that opens up, it releases the spark and discharges it at the plug. So you want to make sure that's all clean and properly gapped. The gap on these KDs is they're pretty much all the same. Pretty much all the same gap. So I am going to help you with the gap. The contact breaker point gap on these Kawasaki's is 0.35 millimeter, or it's going to be 0.014 inches, and that right there will be what you call it, the gap. See how small that is right there? It's very small. You do not want to over tighten that, so do not use an impact gun. I repeat, do not use an impact gun. Use a torque wrench. I prefer this style right here because I'm doing an old school bike, so I like to keep it old school. And the torque specification for that, I'll get you that in a second here, hold on. Is 36 foot-pounds of torque. So 36, your gun will definitely hold more than that. So you definitely don't want to use an impact gun. Okay, so we got back on the ignition wiring. You got your one wire that comes out of your points. Your point wire comes out, goes around town to your 2 connector. One connector up to your ignition coil, and the second coil, the second wire, goes to your on-off switch. Real simple. I have a picture. I took one apart so you can see what's inside of it, how it works. It uses the handlebars as a ground, and you have your, see how it's a U? The copper is your ground. Pretty simple. So when you move it to the left, ground, right, ground, and then it shorts out to the body of it. Okay, so now we're going to put this back together. We got the plug stopper in here, just the crank stop, piston stop, whatever you want to call it, in there. We got the points. You cannot gap the points without the magneto on there. So let's get that on there. You want to make sure your key is in the right spot. It's not falling out or anything like that. Everything's cleaned and lubricated. You cleaned up your cam right here. I'm not doing that on this thing's junk, but I did clean it up a little bit. But it's you want to clean up your cam, lubricate it, line up your keys, see if you can find it. Okay, looks like I'm in. Push it straight back. Yep, I'm in. Turn it till it hits the piston. Yep, okay. You're going to put your washer back on. Don't forget your washer. It's very important. We're going to put this on there. Then what I do is I make sure I'm not cross-threading it. You want to be able to turn it by hand a few turns. Second. Make sure I'm not cross-threading this thing here. I'll look for the wear side, put the wear side back in. Okay, now we're good. And then I tighten them down by hand with a ratchet. Okay, and then I use the torque wrench and torque it down to 36 foot-pounds, which I'm not going to do on this particular motor because it's a parts machine. Then I'm going to take out the what do you call it there, the piston stop. Sometimes if it's hard, you back it off a little bit and it'll come out. I'm doing, so I got oil on my fingers. Hold on 1 second. Okay, now we'll take that out, and then the spark plug goes back in there, but we got it right up in here. Okay, I got a ignition coil screwed on here. Now you can get to the where you gap them. Okay, so you basically have one screw up top. I can't really see it too well on my camera there, but there's a screw up top on the points, which is basically dead center. Show what center points look like right here. It'd be in that little hole, and it's got pivot point at the bottom. You're going to loosen up that screw, and this right here will allow the points to teeter-totter back and forth. So you're going to get to the high side of the cam, and then you're going to use your feeler gauges. Okay, you're going to use your feeler gauges, set of feeler gauges to the specifications I told you about, and then you're going to get that in there and gap the points. You're going to rotate the, open up the gap, put that in, close the gap by teeter-tottering it, and once it just touches it, tighten up the screw. Pull it out, rotate it again until you get it back up to where it was, and recheck your gap. Real simple. Then, after that's all done, before you put the spark plug back in the motor, you want to check it and see if you got ignition, if you should have spark. I got spark on this thing. Hold on a second. See if I can get it in a way that I can show it here. Okay, sorry about that. To stop the piston from moving, you can also use a nice clean, don't use a dirty one that's been out in the ground, use clean piece of rope. Even a long shoelace will do the same thing. You feed it into the spark plug hole and it will build up on top of the piston. When you rotate the rotor, it'll build up in the combustion chamber and will stop the piston from moving. And that works out pretty well as well. So once again, there are other tips and tricks that you can use to jam up a piston. Do not stick a screwdriver in there. Do not stick anything metal in there. Do not drop a nut in there. Don't take the head off and put a nut on top of the piston. And I mean, I've seen it all. It damages it. You don't want to damage it. Use a tool that is appropriate for the job. Keep it clean. Keep it right, and you'll be all set to go. When checking a coil, you can use a multimeter, and you're going to ohm out the coil. I have not had any success on the CDI ones, but you basically, you go from each post. You go from the ground to the what do you call it there? The points connector, where we connect, and you shouldn't be anywhere over 5 ohms. Anything over 5 ohms is junk. Same thing on the high tension lead. You know, there's a what do you call it there? It's in the book on how to do it. There's a few different ways of doing them. You don't need an expensive multimeter. I use a Craftsman, but I also have a Harbor Freight. I use a pizza box a lot of times to keep things off the ground and keep them clean. Trying to think. Yeah, make sure you use the proper tools to take off the side cover, the impact wrench, the impact driver, the big screwdriver to put them back on. Do not use this to put them back on. That's just for taking them off. You can do them by hand with this and they come out just fine. They will tighten themselves up. So I hope this video helps you understand the different ignition systems, what's out there, what to look for, and how to identify a 4-magnet rotor to a 3-magnet rotor, 3 magnets for points to 4 magnets for electronic, and that's your electronic pickup, which is basically the same one. It's not a pickup, it's a what do you call it there? Just a charge coil. That's all it is, just a charge coil. Power comes in and multiplies, and there's a part number right there on it actually. And that right there allows you to, for the electronic ignition, they work in unison. There is no pickup coil. There is no, it just runs around and senses, you know, it picks up the pulses and fires off the plug. That's all it does. Nothing special, no cams. It's kind of a weird system, but it works. And you need a special coil for the CDI, which is not compatible with the points. So make sure you have your right system. The this particular bike had the big giant gray coil, but even though it has the big giant gray coil, if you change the mount over, you can use the smaller black coil. But you can also use the CDI coil on the points, this particular style, and it will work. But you cannot, I repeat, you cannot use this coil because this one is the transistor one for the CDI. It's confusing. I know, I'm sorry. But you can always go back to the video. I'm leaving it up, so you can always go back to the video as a reference guide. And if you have any questions, please send them my way. Comment if this thing helps you. And also too, another little tip, that impact driver right there, if you have a nasty bolt that you can't get out, you can simply pop that off, and you can put a 3/8 socket on it, and now you have an impact driver. So now you can put that on the nut, whack the back of it with a hammer, and it will shock it free. So if you have one of those, the threads on the crankshaft, this nut, are regular standard threads. They're righty lefty loosey, righty tighty. However, the special tool is left hand threads. You have to turn them left to tighten them up, as opposed to right hand threads. So keep that in mind as well. Check your plug gap, your points gap. I put those in there for you, and that'll basically get you to at least fire this thing off. So we got spark on an engine that's been sitting in a bucket. The points are really corroded. I did not gap the points. I left the gap that was on there, but they were so corroded I just cleaned them up with the emery board here, and that took care of it. So hopefully that answers all your stuff. I use the emery cloth there, the scouring pad, to clean up the cam on the back of the mag. I think I touched on everything. So I hope this all helps you guys out. And as always, please subscribe if you have any questions, comments. I know I'm repeating myself, but by all means, throw them my way. Hopefully this helps. Have a good night. Thank you.